Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bread of Life channel. I'm so excited to have Ahmed Eshrah on today. He is a Muslim man. Wonderful. You've seen him on the channel before, I'm sure.
Thank
He
you.
has a YouTube channel called Finding Truth, and he does a lot of great interviews and talks on his channel. So please do subscribe. The link to that is in the description of this video. And we are going to be talking about Ramadan. And just for anybody who's new to the channel, I'm a Christian, and but I love my Muslim friends, and I love learning about their faith. And I want other Christians and people to understand Muslims and appreciate their faith and appreciate aspects of their devotional life that we can learn from. So I'm really happy that Ahmed agreed to come on and talk about fasting for Ramadan. So where do you want to start?
Wherever you want, just go ahead, ask, and because it will be a domino effect. So we can start at any point. It will it will take us through the whole journey. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's just start with, what does the word Ramadan mean?
Okay, so the word Ramadan, actually, it is said. Okay, it is said that Ramadan comes from the root Ramada, which means became very hot. Okay. And so there are two theories, because Arabs were using the lunar calendar. So according to the lunar calendar, that's why I'm saying there are many theories. A specific month will not always be in summer or in winter. So there is an 11-day difference between the calendar according to the moon and the calendar according to the sun. So, for example, Ramadan this year is in March, but next year it will come earlier in March. The following year it will be in February, etc. So it will move between summer, winter, spring, and autumn all the time. So when some people say that it is because it means the very hot month or something, then somebody can object, say there is no hot and cold month in the lunar calendar. So one theory that the months were named at a year or on a specific year where Ramadan was at the very hot season, like August, for example, in the Arab Peninsula. Another theory says that Arabs, they had this bad habit of manipulating time. It's called nasi, and it is mentioned in the Quran, one of their bad habits. So, for example, they want a specific month to come at a specific time because there is a specific benefit about that time. So they moved months around. They played tricks with time. They renamed months, etc. So for some reason, for some time, they liked Ramadan to come at times that were hot, and so the name stuck to it. So eventually, what it means is the hot month, and Ramadan is like words like Rahman. So Rahman is one of God's names, and it comes from Rahma, which is mercy. So Rahman is the one who is full of rahmah, full of mercy, all merciful, that is. So Ramadan comes from Ramada, and Ramada means heat. So it is the month that is full of heat, the very hot month. So I'm thankful that it's not very hot this month, this year in Ramadan.
So what is Ramadan all about? Can you tell us, why do Muslims fast during Ramadan?
Okay, so Ramadan is about the fasting tradition in Islam. So the first thing is that Muslims believe that fasting is not only an Islamic tradition, that fasting is actually a tradition that has been there on in all the messages that Allah has sent to people, except that the exact way of fasting changes. Okay, so in the Quran, fasting in Ramadan is mentioned in detail in specific ayat in chapter 2, which is Surah Al-Baqarah, the cow. So it says, كتب عليكم الصيام كما كتب على الذين من قبلكم. Fasting has been written upon you as it has been written upon those who have came or who have come before you. And the reason for the ordinance of fasting is in the same ayah. لعلكم تتقون. Lest or hence you might be pious. Okay, so when Allah says, okay, now you have to fast, He says the reason is that fasting will take you to piety. Why Ramadan? Because he chose Ramadan. There are some people who are making some inferences. Some of those inferences can be also found in the Quran. It says شهر رمضان الذي أنزل فيه القرآن. The month of Ramadan is the month where Quran has been brought down. So it is believed, or it is the Islamic belief, that the Quran came down from the seventh heaven to the worldly heaven, or to the worldly sky, or to the worldly universe in one shot, and then it came down piece by piece to the Prophet, peace be upon him. And it is also believed that that specific coming down of the Quran not only was in Ramadan, but was also in the last 10 days of Ramadan, and at a specific night, which is called Laylatul Qadr. And that's why there is this one specific night in the last 10 days of Ramadan that has very specific holy status. Yeah.
Okay, so and does the Quran say specifically that people need to fast for the entire month? Does it explain how they need to fast?
Yeah, so first, one thing that maybe your audience do not do is that before Ramadan was ordained as the month of fasting, Muslims used to fast one day, which is the same day that Jews in Medina fasted. Okay, which is in the Arabic and the Islamic tradition until today, it is called the day of Ashura, because it is the 10th day of a specific month. And that day is the day that Moses crossed the sea. So it is the day that, you know, God split the sea in two for Moses, and he took the Israelites in Exodus outside of Egypt. So the Jews were venerating that day, and they were fasting on that day. I'm not sure, do Jews still actually fast that day until today or not, but I think religious ones still do. And the way of fasting that Muslims were commanded to do at that time is that they fasted for the whole 24 hours. So you start the fasting at Fajr, and you continue fasting from dawn to dawn, essentially. Okay, so this was the thing, and then the ayat of fasting came down. At the beginning, fasting was you fast in a more, let's say, a little bit more difficult way. So in fasting, we don't eat, drink, and we don't go to our spouses. So marital relations are forbidden. Halal marital relations are forbidden during fasting.
Okay, so only during the day.
In the beginning, it was for the whole month.
Okay.
Okay, and then it was ordained that after you break your fast, you can have a marital relationship. Okay, so the ayat in the Quran say that you can actually do that. Yeah. So for the whole month, you don't eat or drink or have marital relationships within the time of the fasting. And after the time you break your fast, which is at sunset, so we fast from dawn to sunset. Sometimes this is 12 hours, sometimes it's 16 hours, depends on where you are on the planet. Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess for the time of year and that kind of thing. So now, what is the purpose of the fasting?
So the purpose of the fasting, as the ayah explains, is to gain piety, to be a pious person. And how does that follow? It is because of this. If you can control yourself to know what is naturally permissible or is normally permissible, then you'd rather be able to control yourself to not do what is haram, what is forbidden. So if as a human being you can for 1 month abstain from eating and drinking and going to your wife or to your husband, which is completely okay and part of your normal biological needs, you can say, no, I will not do it, even if it's okay. It's just eating and drinking, for God's sake. Yeah. Then you cannot be weak in front of yourself in other time to eat something that is forbidden, or to gain money from a source that is forbidden to eat or to drink. Or if you can abstain even from the okay relation with your wife, then you are more capable to abstain from a not okay relation that is not with your wife, but with somebody else. And likewise for the woman, if you can abstain from a relation with your husband, who is your beloved husband, then you can as well stand in front of the devil or in front of seduction as a man or as a woman and say, no, I will only lead my life in the proper way. So fasting is like the boot camp, is like the drill, is like the tough drill. If I can pass this test, I can pass any test. This is essentially, if you can let go of the essentials of life because God asks you to do so, then you can also let go of the accessories of life, and you can definitely let go of the forbidden things in life. Yeah, that's the whole point.
Okay, let's pause for a minute. I have like a few comments I'll put up. One is from Andre. He says, that's a very interesting topic. I have many Muslim friends and acquaintances. I'm enjoying the opportunity to hear more about the meaning of Ramadan. Thank you, Andre. And B.S. Lewis says, it's kind of like the anti-Thanksgiving.
No, actually, we have right after Ramadan something that looks like Thanksgiving. Okay. So
Yes.
after Ramadan, at the end of the Ramadan, number one, your fasting is not accepted unless you give to the poor. And you should give to the poor actual food. The classical tradition is that you give to the poor, grain or dates or something that they can use to immediately eat. Okay. So this is one thing. And then right after Ramadan, it's a feast. Okay. It's Eid. It's called Eid. And in the Eid, you would, have some fun with eating and drinking and this kind of stuff.
But even I also have to add that it actually, what I experienced in 10 years of living in Muslim majority countries is that it's actually more like a month of Thanksgiving, because every night when you break the fast, you're having a celebration with friends and family. I mean, maybe not every night, but it very frequently during that time, you do have a celebration of breaking the fast at night. And there's a lot of food and a lot of, celebrating going on during Ramadan also. Do you want to talk about that?
There are three aspects of it. Okay. Number one, there is a social aspect that comes with Ramadan. Okay. And what happens when people get together around the table? Okay. They enjoy the meal. This is how it goes. So typically, for example, in Muslim countries, for example, myself and my wife will go to my parents for the first breakfast, and then myself and my wife will go to her parents for the second one. And maybe for the third one, we will bring my brother and her sister home. And the following one, my brother will invite us to his home. And the following one, it's like everybody is trying to invite everybody. So for the first 10 days of Ramadan, you will probably either be inviting or get invited. And what happens when you have a guest at home, you give them the best things. You put the best things on the table. So you have those are really social events. But they come from a specific thing in the religion, is that when you give somebody food that he breaks his fast by eating this food, then you get thawab, which is a good deed that is equivalent to the thawab of his own fasting. Okay. And the reason this thing is there is that Muslims are so much encouraged to offer food and to offer money for people who would typically not have proper meals, so that they will buy food and they will eat that food in Ramadan. So it does not become a month of deprivation for them. Everybody is deprived from food and drink in the mornings, but may also everybody be satisfied with something at the end of the day. So it is a great month of giving. In Ramadan, a good deed is 70 times a good deed in other time, in the normal time. So people would be very charitable, especially giving away food. So you will have plenty of food for everybody. Now, this should not go to the area of we are overeating or we are gaining weight. But due to the very social traditions that have been built around Ramadan, yes, some Muslims get overweight in Ramadan. Some others don't. Some others get overweight in the first 10. In the second 10 days, they return to their normal weight. And maybe in the last 10 days, they lose weight. It really depends on your choice. But it's a month of great charity. And typically, you will not find somebody hungry in Ramadan. You'll find people standing in traffic lights, trying to catch anybody who is still in the street at the time of sunset and offering him something to eat. Because then if you start your breakfast with what I have given you, I have gotten some good deeds. So it's very common if you go to Egypt, to Saudi Arabia, to the Emirates, to Qatar, to Morocco, to Tunisia, to Algeria, to any Muslim majority country, you will find tables, big tables in the streets where people are serving meat, rice, vegetables, etc. They start serving the table half an hour or 1 hour before sunset, and people will come and sit there and wait for sunset, and they will start eating together. This is poor people, rich people, everybody. So it's a great month of giving and a very merry month in terms of social and different interactions between different layers of society, let's say. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And it also does seem like a month where it's pretty hard, especially during the hot months and people who work outside and that kind of stuff. I think like universally, like everybody that I talk to about their fasting during Ramadan, it's not the food that's the hard part, it's the water, right? Like not drinking anything for all that.
Yeah. So if you compare, for example, fasting to this new modern thing, which is called intermittent fasting, the difference is that in intermittent fasting, you drink. Yeah. But in Ramadan, you don't either eat or drink at all. And sometimes the challenging thing is drinking, especially in summer, especially in very hot places. If you've gone to Saudi Arabia or to the Gulf countries in general, you know that it really gets hot. It's really hot. So it's like you're in a furnace or something in August and July and these months. But guess what? We get trained on fasting since very young age. So, for example, I would train my kids to fast at the age of 7, for example. And they will start by fasting, a few hours. And then the next year, they will add some more hours. And then the next year, they will add some more hours. So by the age of 10, they would be typically making the fast from dawn to sunset. And by the time they reach puberty, whether boy or girl, they would have been like fasting for a couple of years. So your system gets trained on it, and you can actually even do some fasting outside of Ramadan. It's like an extra good deed. But yeah, sometimes the water is there, but there is a huge amount of spiritual power during Ramadan that you will even not notice it. Yeah.
Now, why do you think there's extra spiritual power during Ramadan? Like what's the source of that? Is that coming from God? Is that coming from the fast itself? Is that coming from like something that the fast is producing in the spiritual realm?
Okay, I think there are actually 4 reasons. Okay. Number 1, you know that you are fasting for God. You know that you're fasting because Allah said that you want to fast. And guess what? If everybody is expecting that you're fasting and in secret you go to the fridge and you drink and you eat, nobody sees you. So the only reason that you are really fasting is that you know that Allah is observing you, right? So it creates this sense that I am fasting. Nobody really knows whether I am fasting or not except God. Okay? So this feeling of observance, of this very private, this very personal relation, very individual relation between you and God gives you this spiritual boost. I'm doing this because God wants me to do that, and He's watching. So this is number 1. Number 2 is that it is a great good deed to be able to control yourself, to have self-control. What is our real fight with the devil? What is our real fight with Satan? What is our real fight with ourselves? It is whether you submit to your desire or not. So if you are able to have real control over your desire for a complete month, well, you can do it for every other month, right? So this sense of I will make it today, you're running the marathon, and every mile you are more energized, is another reason. Another reason is that everybody else is doing it. So, this guy is younger than me. This guy is old. This guy is 70 years old and he's fasting. So you have this collective, we are standing together with each other. So let's say if I'm fasting, for example, in a European or a non-Muslim majority country, and I go to work and everybody is drinking beautifully brewed coffee and, and the smell of coffee and the smell of bakery is all over the place, it will be difficult. It's like teasing, right or not? But if everybody is doing it, it gives this sense of, we are mutually encouraging each other. And there is one more element, is that you wake up at dawn, or before dawn, actually, typically 1 hour before dawn. This time is great time for spiritual power in general. 3-4 a.m. You're waking up at 3-4 a.m. Very quiet, very peaceful. You have the suhoor meal, which is the what you eat before you start your fasting with your family. And then you go. Typically, even people who do not go to the masjid as their daily habit, they will go to the masjid and pray dawn at the masjid. And then by the time you are finishing, you are going out of the masjid, maybe walking home. Very peaceful time, very quiet. The prayers at dawn are typically very peaceful and very spiritual. So you get charged with great spiritual power at the beginning of the day. And then at night, there is the tahajjud prayer, which is you typically pray 21 rak'ah, or sometimes 13, sometimes 11, depending how energetic you are. But these prayers, they typically take somewhere from 45 minutes to 2 hours, and it's straight ahead prayers with all what prayers and listening to the Quran, etc. So there is great spiritual power from the extra prayers that you do. These are prayers on top of the 5 daily prayers, the typical ones. And then there is the recitation of the Quran. It elevates the spirit. And guess what? Being not full from the inside elevates the spirit. So I think there is this balance between the material content of the body and the level your spirit is free. So when you're hungry and you get over it. Now, sometimes people are hungry and they become angry. But when you're hungry and you get over it, we don't need to think about food. When you have prayers and recitations of the Quran and making good deeds and giving charity to people as the typical thing that you do every day, guess what happens? You are strong spiritually, especially if you continue your observance of not doing any bad deeds after you break your fast. So even people, for example, who smoking in the majority of the Islamic scholarship breaks the fast. So even people who smoke stop smoking in the mornings of Ramadan. People who use pipes stop using pipes. Definitely people who do drugs stop doing drugs, etc. So you have religiously to get off all your bad habits. So all of this definitely elevates you spiritually, for sure, and makes it easier for you to fast.
Now, and so this is kind of goes along with what you were just saying, but both Blessed Be He and Melody Joy are asking, does this make you closer to God?
We feel that we get closer to
now. So
yeah.
You're talking about the elevation of spirit and the spiritual power, but in what way do you feel closer to God?
Yeah, so I'll tell you something. Number one, the very act of observance is something that brings you closer to God, that you are observing all the time, that you are letting go of your desires, that you see that you can get over them and this kind of stuff. Number two, the continuous recitations of the Quran. So typically every Muslim will read the Quran cover to cover in Ramadan. Okay. And you will read it alone, and then you will listen to it during the prayers, because the prayers, the Imam will be reciting out loud. Typically, you will have very intense spiritual experiences in Ramadan. Typically, this is what happens. For people who are really seeking spiritual, I mean spiritual experience, that you go out in tears, and you things like those things that happen when somebody, for example, was an atheist and became a believer. You break tears, and these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you have these kinds of experiences, even
visions, dreams, that kind of thing.
Good dreams, good visions, but something else while you're reciting or while in your prayer, you can find yourself, having tears and thinking of your relation with God, and then thinking, well, I'm doing all these prayers and all these recitations and doing all this charity. Why can't I just continue doing this? You have a general feeling of repentance. Ramadan is a month of repentance, a very strong month of repentance, because when you are doing much less sins, and when everybody around you is doing much less sins, and you are replacing them with charity and good deeds, etc., and self-control, etc., you think, well, maybe now with this closeness to God, it's a good time to repent. So many people use Ramadan, like things like New Year resolutions in the new year. There's nothing really special about the new year, okay? But if this is something like a religious occasion, like, I don't know, Thanksgiving, like, I don't know, something else, then it is of that kind of long time, and then there is these 3 10-day packages that have specific significance. So in the first 10 days, you warm up. In the second 10 days, it's like more like a habit. You need 21 days to build a habit. On the 22nd day, you have already built the habit, and you still have like the good part of the remaining 10 days. And now you have reached a specific level of elevation where, now it's the time to repent. And then you have the last 10 days where typically everybody does the tahajjud, which is praying the night. So you would typically wake up at dawn. You will, before dawn, you would have your meal. You will pray. Typically, there is a little time to sleep. Maybe you have 1 hour of sleep or something. Then you go to work, and then you have maybe you go back home a couple of hours before sunset. You have a couple of hours there. But then in the last 10 days, after you break your fast, you will typically go pray the 5th prayer, which is Isha, at the masjid, and then stay there for a couple of hours and do Salat al-Tarawih. And then there is another Salah, which is Tahajjud, which is another 21 rak'ah. So you can do like 18 and then 21. So this is really plenty, huge amount of praying and of recitation. And some people will read the whole Quran again in the last 10 days. So all of those things with more amplified charity, and many people will set up their time of paying alms, which is you calculate how much alms you need to pay on annual basis. It's like 2.5%, typically 2.5% of your holdings. And they will design their year to start in Ramadan. So they will also have their alms. If you have $1 million, then you should pay out $25,000 in alms. Alms is like zakat. It's in Islam called zakat, which is you have to pay to the poor and other kinds of people who are in debt, etc. So you also pay the alms. So many things that you are doing: prayer, recitation, alms, charity, feeding others.
Now, are there specific places that you are required to give to, or do you just like find random poor people and give them money? Like, or is there like organizations, or are you supposed to give to the mosque? Like, who do you actually give it to?
Okay, so I will tell you one fun fact. First, that for example, in Ramadan there is this kind of alms which is called zakat al-fitr, alms of breaking fast, which you have to pay out before Ramadan, before praying for the feast. Okay. And this one, everybody has to pay it, even if he is poor. Okay. Even if you are a recipient of alms, okay, you have to pay this kind of zakah if you can. If you have in your home some food, you need to give something out. Even if you are not somebody who will give out alms anyway. Okay. This kind of alms you will give if you can. So everybody is giving something. Everybody is getting into the habit of doing something charitable. Now, to whom to give the zakat or the alms? There are 8 types of people in Islam that should take zakat or alms, including the zakat that is typically paid, and the zakat that's paid in Ramadan. So you give to poor people, you give to very poor people, and there is a distinction in Islam. So you can give to somebody who has money and who has an income, but the income is not enough. So this is a poor person. Okay, so it's not just because you're working. Maybe it's like somebody who is in, let's say, taking minimum wage, for example. But you know that, there are things in life that he cannot do. So this is one type. There are people who do not have. So these are, so the first one is called masakin. The second one is called fuqara. There are people who are in debt, okay, and they do not have the means to pay back their debt, okay. This can be, they might have a house, they might have furniture, but selling your furniture to pay back your debt means that you cannot pay back your debt. To pay back your debt, you will need to become poor. Okay, so this one is called gharim. Okay, somebody who has got into debt because he is he wanted to pay back the debt, but he cannot. So you pay back debt for him. There is one that you cannot do now because it's about freeing slaves. So one of the things that Islam instituted is that you can pay alms and charity to free slaves. So if somebody is a slave and you can give to his slave master some money and you set him free, this will be something that to people who have joined Islam recently and they need support. So this is called the mu'allafa qulubuhum. So let's say, for example, in Christianity, somebody who was an atheist, all his friends are atheists, and he became Christian, right? And then everybody is against him. How come you become Christian? So it's like support for new Muslims, let's say. How many did I count? Yeah, and then there is Ibn Sabil. So, for example, let's say some Muslim is coming to my country and he lost his luggage, for example. He is rich. In his country, he is rich. Or he lost his wallet, or he lost his credit cards. So he wants to go back to his country, but he doesn't have the means. But he is originally rich. So you can give him alms, and he can use the alms to go back to his country. And the last one is jihad fi sabilillah, or fi sabilillah. It's called fi sabilillah. It can be generally fi sabilillah. It means to do things of public interest. Okay, sometimes it can also be to help the defense effort of the nation, because Islam does not have there is no taxes in Islam. You don't tax people to finance the government by force. So paying for public interest is something that you can do. Building a hospital for the poor, for example, drilling a well so that people can drink from, etc. Making hostels for people to be able to go and stay there for free until they return to their countries, etc. So fi sabilillah is a big thing that can have many applications in general. So yeah, so those are 8 kinds. I hope I have counted them all. And those are the ones who should take alms and should take sadaqat, etc., and including but the alms of Ramadan is typically in the form of food. You would give grain or dates or beans or this kind of thing. So everybody has something to eat at the feast.
Okay. And then, so Ramadan's coming up in a few days. So what does your family do to prepare for Ramadan?
Okay, so typically people would stock on food because there will be all the social events almost for the bigger part of the first 10 days. So my mom and would be preparing for the social event that she is going to invite me, for example, and my family on the first day, and my brother, etc. And my wife's mom will be doing the same, and we'll be doing the same because we need to invite them, etc. But most importantly is that you prepare yourself. You prepare yourself by trying to reconcile with those whom you have tensions with. It is highly not recommended to go past the middle of Sha'ban. Sha'ban is the month that is before Ramadan, which is this month. Typically, you should, by the middle of Sha'ban, so 15 days away from Ramadan, you should not have hard feelings with other Muslims, at least specifically. You should either forgive or seek forgiveness. If you have a problem with somebody, you would either forgive him, or if you have done harm to somebody, you would ask him forgiveness. Why? So you enter Ramadan with a clean heart, so you are able to worship God without having grudges, because grudges would really lower your spiritual level. So this is the trick. And typically you would try to do some fasting drills. So it is highly recommended, according to the Sunnah of the Prophet, to do some fasting in Sha'ban, which is the month that is before Ramadan, as much as you can. Maybe just a few days, the majority of the month, whatever you can. But it's forbidden to fast the last day of Sha'ban, because you don't want to put extra days before Ramadan that become attached to it by accumulation. So yeah. So try to fast, fix relations with people, get ready for the social events. If you typically gain weight in Ramadan, maybe try to lose some weight in Sha'ban. So
I never heard this about the clearing up offenses in Sha'ban. So
yeah,
has anyone ever called you up and apologized to you in the month before Ramadan?
I did it at least.
You've called other people and apologized?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
At some points, I would send messages to some people, sometimes you just ask for general forgiveness. Okay. So if I've done anything, just forgive me. And sometimes if there is something specific, better clear it up. Typically if a man and a wife are not in good terms, they would get in good terms in Ramadan. Families get fixed in Ramadan. If you are not having, if the last few months were not very good with your parents, okay, well, they are going to invite you in Ramadan, and you have to invite them. You have to invite your brother. So typically families reconcile either before Ramadan or in Ramadan. It's very heavy for somebody to go through Ramadan and not have a good reconciliation with family and friends. It's very difficult. And the side effects is that you eat in you get so many invitations and you eat for the first 10 days. Maybe it compensates the Ramadan fasting for those 10 days, but the social impact and the human impact and the heart impact is really great. You have to see things, in context. Yeah. So yeah, the reconciliation is a very important thing in Ramadan. Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, Captive Desk says I didn't get a call from Ahmed yet. I guess I guess you've done something to offend him, and he's waiting in the next couple of days.
I don't remember it, but if I have, please forgive me.
Yeah. So and then Pigs Can Fly says Jesus did say that we should make amends prior to offering in the temple. So we have something like this in Christianity too. Actually, Jesus said, if you're going to give an offering and you realize that your brother has something against you, you should go and make it right before coming and making an offering to God.
Wow. Is it in I because you're the Christian here, so do you know that Jesus used to fast? Is it something that you have read in the Bible? Yeah.
Well, I don't know. Is there a specific? Yeah, there's the specific time when Jesus fasted for 40 days.
Yeah.
So, we have that record of him fasting, and I that may be the only time that we specifically have him recorded as fasting. But I mean, that's a pretty significant fast, 40 days. Most of us have never fasted for 40 days, and he wasn't getting to eat every night like in Ramadan. So,
So even that's what I'm saying. So fasting in Islam is something that was there with all the prophets, all the time, all religions coming from God. So, by the way, one of the criteria to know if this is an authentic religion from God or not is to find, is there fasting in that religion or not? Because according to Islam, at least. So if I go to a religion and there is no fasting, I know it's not coming from God. Or somebody has corrupted it, removed it. Yeah. But we know that there is Jesus fasted. In the Quran, by the way, when Virgin Mary conceived of Jesus, right after that, she tells her people that she is now fasting, so she is not going to talk. So according to Islam, there is one kind of fasting in Judaism which relates to not speaking, so a higher level of self-restraint. In Islam, you are not supposed to talk in terms of talking nonsense. Okay, you shouldn't talk about things that have no value or petty things, etc. You should really take care of what you're saying, but it's not like you stop talking at all. But yeah, so there are other some other different facets of fasting, let's say. Yeah.
Gur says he fasted 3 days once when he was a Christian. Good job, Gur.
Yeah. By the way, for example, Egyptian Christians and many Arab Christians, Orthodox, they
Yes.
fast, but they fast in terms of not eating meat and fish and eggs and this kind of things. Yeah, and I think they have many fasting after many saints, and this is the fasting of that saint and the other saint. There is plenty of fasting days, but it's fasting in terms of not eating animal life. Yeah.
Yeah, different traditions within Christianity have different practices. You know, you have in the Catholic Church, they have fasting during, you know, the period of Lent. And, you know, in Protestant fasting, we don't really have like specific days when we're required to fast. But it is a practice that Protestant Christians do. And often, you know, it's like fasting. Sometimes it's just fasting from a certain type of thing, but it's often fasting just, you know, no food at all for a period of time.
Yeah,
So,
I didn't know that. How much time? Is it like part of the day or
like I said,
straight?
there's no rules about it, but I mean, you know, there's been, you know, times for me when I've fasted for, you know, a 24-hour period or a 36-hour period, or even I've done 3 days before with, you know, just no food at all. But I've never done I've done a few times just in solidarity with my Muslim friends, gone without the food and water for the period, you know.
So you do no food at all, but some water, but you can drink,
Yes.
right? Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, it's a little different.
But like I said, there's no real rules for it. It's just kind of the thing where, you know, if at whatever time that you feel like you need to draw close to God for a reason, or, you know, like you said, maybe to put aside your earthly desires and focus on the spiritual side of things, then, you know, and, you know, like my church, we decided to do a church fast together for a week. But like, it was like a week of, okay, everyone find what's on your conscience of what you want to fast from. And then, so there were no rules about exactly what we should fast from, whether from all food or from some types of food or whatever. But it was just a week where we said, okay, we're kind of consecrating ourselves to God and seeking the Lord this week.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, Christian traditions can be different depending on what denomination or whatever, but, you know, there is definitely fasting within Christianity.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, now,
what else?
I'm curious about what Egypt's practices are, because, you know, I lived in 3 different Muslim majority countries, and the fasting was very different. I mean, the rules for what you could legally do and the way that it looked in different countries was different. In Jordan, it was very strict. There was no food or drink anywhere on the street, no restaurants opened. I think things have changed a little bit since I lived there. I've heard there's more restaurants opened and things, but at the time that I was there, no, you did not even show food outside. And it was actually illegal to drink and eat outside or to smoke. And so in Jordan, it was very strict. So like for Ramadan, like that was a major change of lifestyle. But then we lived in Turkey, and you can't even tell the difference in Turkey when it's Ramadan and when it isn't, because all the restaurants are open, everything's open, people are smoking outside. So it's very different. And in Dubai, it was kind of middle of the road where there was, you know, some restaurants open and but it was a little bit more strict. So
yeah.
What's it like in Egypt? Is it illegal to eat and drink during Ramadan?
I don't think it's illegal. I don't think there is a law against it actually. But number one, it's not economic to open a restaurant in the morning in Ramadan because nobody is gonna come. So it'll be just paying your waiters double money, because they will sit doing nothing in the mornings, while really everybody is going to come after sunset. So if there's, for example,
Right.
somebody who is a Christian or somebody who is sick or something, and he would like food, he will typically order, and you will typically keep your delivery, because many people will be ordering food already for breakfast. So typically you will not find shops open during the fasting hours, because it's obviously not economic. I'm not sure if there is actually a law, because people just don't do it. However, if you go, for example, to a hotel which has, foreign residents that are of other religions, you will typically find the buffet of the hotel operating in the normal hours of the buffet. But you will find a special buffet at the time, a pretty special buffet at the time of breakfast. It will be, very great variety. Many people would like to take their families or make their invitations or social events outside, so they will take people to, open buffets in hotels or to restaurants. So the restaurant and the eating activity is typically after sunset. Is it actually illegal to eat or drink? I'm not sure if that I have gone over a law that says that, but nobody does it typically at all. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, and I noticed that it actually becomes very cheap to travel in some countries during Ramadan, because the like that's the
Yeah,
time to go, because there's nobody who wants to travel at that time, so the hotels really
absolutely.
lower their rates and stuff.
Yes,
So
you're right.
tips for you guys who want to travel in the Middle East. um
Yeah.
yeah, so okay, so Egypt is then it would be more like Jordan was, where you would notice a major difference
You would
during
immediately
Ramadan.
notice. Yeah, you'll typically
Yeah.
find all the chairs and all the tables in the restaurant, packed, and then they start unpacking and putting all the white cloths and everything before sunset, and they will just keep serving until dawn. So restaurant hours flips. So they work from 7 to 3 a.m. or something. This is typically what they do, or from 6, depends on when sunset is. Yeah.
Now this is kind of I know he's joking here, but I mean this is kind of funny actually. B.S. Lewis wants to know, is an IV drip prohibited during
Okay.
Ramadan? Because
Okay.
there's a lot of people that do that to hydrate now. They get an IV. So is that would that be
Well,
a
some scholars will tell you that if the IV is a replacement for food, then it is prohibited. But if IV is, therapeutic, you have to take a medicine, then they will tell you okay. So there will be different schools of scholarship there. But if you are taking food intravenous, then many scholars will tell you no. Yeah. Islam doesn't like tricks. Even I think other religions, if something is ordained and you are fasting anyway, it's a relation between you and God. So there is no point to do tricks. We don't even, typical Muslims even don't try to do those tricks. People will ask about that if they need to take an injection because they have a certain disease or they have a certain condition. Yeah, if you have to take the medication by mouth, if you have to ingest it, then you are allowed not to fast at all. So you can fast after Ramadan to compensate, or if it's a chronic decision where you will not be cured and you cannot take the medication before dawn or after sunset, you have to take it, for example, 4 times a day, 3 times a day. It has one part of it has to be during the fasting. Then you are allowed to break your fast, and you have a permit for that from Allah. So it's okay. It's in the Quran actually. Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to talk about some of the exceptions, like who doesn't fast?
Yeah. So number one, if you are before puberty, you are not obliged to fast, but you get trained to it. The way I was telling you, at 7 maybe you fast for 1 hour. Obviously, maybe you just fast for 1 hour just because. But the point is that you tell your kid that now you are going to fast when you wake up until, I don't know, midday or something. So if you are below puberty, you don't get to fast. If you're sick, you don't get to fast. If you're traveling, you are allowed not to fast, but typically traveling these days is very easy. But if you are traveling beyond 81 kilometers, you are typically allowed to break your fast, but you have to compensate after Ramadan. Because typically, in the old days, you will travel by horse or by donkey or by camel or by chariot or whatever, and it's a difficult thing. So if you're sick, if you're traveling, if you're too young, and if you're too old, you don't fast. If you're pregnant, you typically don't fast, especially if it is a risk to the baby. If you're breastfeeding, you don't fast because it will typically deprive the baby. If you have just had birth to a child, you don't fast for a specific amount of time. It's called fatrat al-nifas. So typically anything that will predominantly cause harm to you to fast, or to somebody else you are responsible for, like for example you're a mother and you're pregnant or you're breastfeeding, etc., then you have a permit not to fast. And if you will recover from that thing, then you should compensate after Ramadan. If you will not recover, like for example you are already 90 years old and you're not expected to get younger anytime soon, so you cannot fast, so you have a permit not to fast. And in this case, if you are not going to compensate, then you give charity. And what is the charity? You feed somebody. So if I'm going to fast, I'm going to break my fast on that kind of meal. This meal is like, it's $100, it's a $10 meal. Okay, so I go and I buy a $10 meal and I give it to somebody else to eat it. So I feed people the same food I would have eaten. Okay, so it's again one more way to cause more charity in Ramadan. So there are many people who are sick, there are many people who are old, there are many people who have these excuses and they would like to compensate. Then you can compensate by giving food and charity to people. So that's one more reason there is plenty of charity happening around, apart from the other things. Yeah, so there are those exceptions. Yeah, and there are other exceptions, fringe exceptions, but those are the main ones. But if you're sick and you can fast and it's not dangerous to you, then many people are really sick and with chronic diseases, and they are so attached to the spiritual effect of the fasting, and they would just kingdom come, I don't care, I will fast. Okay, it's very common. It's something that's very deeply entrenched with Muslims. It's very difficult for a Muslim to break his fast without a very strong reason. Yeah.
Yeah, Andrew says, I work in bookings for a medical company, and I do notice some Muslim patients booking exams that require a full bladder or barium swallows after or before Ramadan.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, if you have a condition, as I said, but many times people will avoid doing these things within Ramadan because they don't have to be forced to drink, or yeah.
Now, B.S. Lewis asks, is this works-based salvation? Now, do you understand the question? Because I may have to give you some context.
No.
Okay.
Maybe you'll bother elaborate. Yeah.
Okay, so in Christianity, we say that our salvation is not works-based, meaning like there's not, we don't do things to make ourselves acceptable before God. Like we're not saved by what we do. We are saved because of what Christ did for us. So of course we still want to please God. So we're still doing things to please, like we want to do things because we love God, right? So like the choices that we make, we want, to do the things that God loves. And so, but we don't think that like doing those things is helping us get into God's kingdom or get into, just salvation from sin and death. So would you say that Ramadan is helping people to be accepted by God?
Yeah. So actually, the doctrine in Islam has two parts. Number one, you achieve salvation primarily because you believe. Okay, so this is the cornerstone. It's different from Christianity in terms of You achieve salvation because you believe, not because a prophet or somebody has paid your debt. Okay, this is the difference. But the similarity is salvation is because of belief. And belief is different from being a Muslim. I can have Muslim written in my passport or ID or birth certificate or my parents' birth certificate or whatever, but I don't believe from inside. I don't believe. Okay. So belief is the key to salvation, and salvation means that you will eventually go to heaven. Okay. However, there is this other two pieces to it. Now, belief will get you to heaven, but maybe you will have to go to hell before you go to heaven. Okay, maybe you need to pay back your debt. And paying back your debt can be, for example, I did harm to somebody, then I will have to compensate that person. If I don't have enough good deeds to give him from my good deeds, then I might actually take some of his bad deeds and go to pay for them in hell. It's like similar to perjury kind of thing in Judaism or in Christianity. But then, having said that, if you have belief and you have paid back your debt, whether your debt towards God or towards others, in terms of purifying yourself from sins, it is the Islamic concept is that whatever you have done in your life does not make you deserve heaven. Because heaven is so big a gift that what have you done? 60 years of good deeds? Heaven is forever, right? Even if you measure it, 60 years, it's nothing. And how did you achieve those good deeds? Is because of this body that God has given you, and this money that God has given you, and this health that God has given you. So even the tools that we use, we don't own. So nothing makes us deserve heaven. And this is why the first thing is there. Salvation is because it's God's gift, because we chose to believe and we chose a certain way of life. But then we have to pay for our errors. And that's why we have those stops like Ramadan to purify. So you'd rather purify yourself in this life rather than having to pay a heavy price on Judgment Day. So you have places in time and places in space where you can achieve purification. You can achieve purifications in the 5 prayers of every day, whether at your home or in the masjid. You can achieve purification in Ramadan. You can achieve purification during Hajj, which is pilgrimage. Or you can just achieve purification by repenting at any time, any part of the day, any place in the world. And then there is the concept that, again, whatever is in heaven, you have done nothing to deserve this. It's so big a gift, you have done nothing to deserve this. So there is this punchline that says, ادخلوها برحمتي واقتسموها بأعمالكم. It's almost in a hadith. So enter heaven with my mercy, or because of my mercy, and split it up with your deeds. So those who have greater deeds will have a higher status in heaven. But entering heaven itself is because God is merciful. He's merciful because he forgave, or he forgives, or he will forgive. And he is merciful because even one sin can have the life of eternal hell, because it's very ungrateful. But he gives all those opportunities for forgiveness, and then he typically would forgive. If you have 10 loads of good deeds and 9 loads of sins, then the 10 will outweigh. If you have the other way around, you have to compensate one. Maybe he will forgive you, or maybe you will have to compensate by suffering in the afterlife. But then you will still go to heaven, and your status in heaven, your level in heaven, will be dependent on if you're a better person, or you've been a better person than somebody else, then your status in heaven is higher. Yeah. So yes, I would not say that Ramadan is works-based salvation, but it is works-based purification, let's say, and getting rid of many sins, and loading many good deeds, and putting yourself in a general status to be eligible for God's forgiveness, more eligible for God's forgiveness. Yeah, now rather than later.
Okay, well, now I want to give you this was kind of a reaction to what you were saying, so I want to give you the chance to correct this if you want. But Gorgeous Roddy Chrome says, okay, so correct thought equals salvation. And I think he said this because you said it's your belief. So
Yeah.
how do you think it's having correct thoughts and beliefs that is what you know, provides your salvation?
Yeah, just like your the opposite of salvation, I don't know what that would be. Your loss, I don't know, is also the result of a thought. So if you are an atheist, for example, and you deny that God exists, then your good deeds will mean nothing because you're doing them not because God asked you for them. You're being charitable just because, I don't know, corporate social responsibility. It looks good to society. You know, if I give to those guys, maybe one day they will give me whatever. This does not count as a good deed. And why does it not count of a good deed? Because of the fundamental thought that you have below that. The fundamental level is, I don't believe God exists. So guess what? You don't believe he exists. You do not deserve that he writes any good deeds for you because you don't believe that he exists in the first place. So actually, thoughts work both ends of the formula. You deserve salvation because of a thought, and you do not deserve salvation because of a thought. Now, if you deserve salvation in principle because you believe in God, for example, in Islam, then okay, you deserve salvation, but it doesn't. It's not an open ticket to be a bad person to everybody around you and kick that person around and do that bad and treat this person bad and steal people's money and do this and that and go unaccounted for. No, it doesn't work this way. You will have to stand responsible for what you have done, whether you will pay for it in this life or you will repent and make compensations to people in this life, or you will have to pay for it in the afterlife. And after you have paid your debt, then your belief will save you again. But then somebody who has believed and has been a great person who's feeding the poor for his whole life is not like somebody who has just believed and did many bad things and some good things during his life. These are not the same. This one is going to be at that status, that other one is going to be at this status, the other one is at this status. And this status is primarily closeness to God and enjoyment of God's presence and enjoyment of God's pleasure towards you. Yeah, this is how it is. Other than, some material things in heaven, but the
Well, I
primary thing is
liked
that.
what you said about how, like, it's God he's the one who provided us with the tools to do good.
Yeah.
So without God, you don't have breath, you don't have a heartbeat, you don't have hands, you don't have a brain. Without him, you can't do anything good anyway because you don't exist. Everything that you're able to do is a gift from God for you to be able to do. So,
Absolutely.
that's, I liked the way that you described how this is not works-based salvation, because even our works, we have to give credit to God for the things that he provided for us to be able to make the choice to do good works.
Yeah. Actually, in the Quran, it says, وَمَا كُنَّا لِنَهْتَدِي إِلَّا أَنْ هَدَانَ اللَّهُ. We wouldn't have been guided except if God has guided us. So even if I believe in God, part of me believing in God is that he has sent a message that, where he made himself known to me. So I choose to accept his existence and his religion or whatever. So even the guidance that the very fact that I choose to believe is because he has sent a message, even this one. So
And
yeah.
when you say he sent the message, you're not just talking about the Quran or message through the prophets, but you're talking about God's revelation of himself in creation and in us. Is that right?
Yeah, well, I was actually meaning a message. I mean, like a message through a prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but definitely, in Islam, we say that there is Kitab Allah al-Mastur wa Kitab Allah al-Manzur. Kitab Allah al-Mastur, book of God that is written, and Kitab Allah al-Mastur is book of God that is observable. Okay, so both are the book of God. Because what
Mm-hmm.
would happen if he sends a message through, Moses, Jesus, or Muhammad, peace be upon them all, and you look around you and there is completely no evidence for God. The universe looks ugly. Animals, are like destroying everything around you. Everything is chaotic. It seems like this universe is a product of complete chaos. There will be no reason to believe. Yeah, there is no mercy in the universe. There is no harmony in the universe. There is no beauty in the universe. There is no justice in the universe whatsoever. So yes, I think both of them, God's revelation through direct messages is only possible if complemented by observable messages. I think this relates to what we have just been doing before we come here. So yeah,
Yes. So,
completely true.
B.S. Lewis says Ramadan is a pillar of the faith. Can you talk
Yeah,
about that? Like, how is that if we're talking about the 5 pillars of faith, like, or of Islam?
yeah.
Um,
So absolutely. So Ramadan is one. There's 5 pillars of faith. You are right, but actually the right term is there are 5 pillars of Islam. Okay, there's actually 6 pillars of faith. Okay, so we have faith, which is belief. So there is 6 pillars for that. Okay, and there is Islam, which is the religion of Islam, and there is 5 pillars for that. Okay, so if to complete the picture, the 6 pillars of faith is to have faith in Allah Himself. So you know that Allah exists and believe that He exists, and you accept His angels. Through which He would send messages, and hence you accept His messages, so His book, and all Muslims believe in all the books. So in Quran, Gospel, Torah, Psalms, etc. And then you believe in His messengers. So you start from Allah through angels. He sends His messengers, messages to His messengers. Okay, and then you believe in the afterlife. You believe in Judgment Day and the afterlife, and then you believe in fate. Okay, that things are ordained, that God is in control. Okay, and this life is a test, and things are ordained. Some things are ordained to happen to you. You do not have control of them happening or not happening. You have control of your reaction and your belief. Okay, so those are the 6 pillars of faith, and you have to. You cannot say, I believe in God, but I don't believe in angels. I believe in God, but I don't believe in that He sent messages. This means that you have not completed faith. The faith that causes you to achieve salvation is to accept all 6 things. Okay, and this consequently means, for example, if a Muslim says, I accept the Quran, but I don't accept that there is a prophet called Jesus, for example, or Moses, and I don't accept that there is something called the Torah, you're not a Muslim. You do not have faith in this case. Okay, so these are the 6 pillars of faith. Now, there are 5 pillars of Islam as a religion. They start number 1 by the Shahada, that you accept that Allah is one and that Prophet Muhammad is His prophet. Okay. So this is number 1. And number 2, the second pillar is prayer, and we pray 5 times a day. So every single day. Okay. If you stop praying because you deny praying, you are not a Muslim anymore. But if you miss one prayer, you can compensate. So this is if you deny the thing, then you have broken a pillar. If you break a pillar, you break the building. This is what it means. So this is what pillars mean. Okay? So it's like, imagine a building, it's on 5 pillars, and you break a pillar, so the building falls down. Yeah, so salah or prayer is the second one, and then the zakah is the third one, paying alms. And you pay alms when you have money beyond a certain holdings, beyond a certain level, not paper money, fake paper money that we have today, but real money. Paper money can also count, but it's talking about holdings, general holdings. If you have cattle, if you have trade, if you have gold, if you have silver, etc., these are holdings. You need to pay alms to the poor. And then the fourth one is Siyam, which is fasting in Ramadan. You can fast outside Ramadan, but fasting in Ramadan is a pillar. So if you are a Muslim and you say, I don't think that fasting is something good to do, I'm not going to fast. Not because I'm sick, not because I cannot, not because I'm traveling, not because I am weak this year, and I'll just not do it because I like food so much. But I know that Siyam is ordained, and I feel guilty that I'm not doing it. Your guilt will make you do it later, okay? But if you deny it, you are not a Muslim. If you're continuously not doing it during your life, some scholars will say you're not. Some scholars will say you'd better repent, okay? And then the fifth one is Hajj. It's doing pilgrimage at least once in your lifetime to Mecca to do the pilgrimage, if you can, if you have the means, if you have the financial and physical means. Then those are the 5 pillars. So obviously Siyam or fasting of Ramadan is very important to Muslims. That's why. Yeah, and Muslims have just maintained their tradition there. Nothing has changed. Some Muslim country, Muslim majority company might have many people who are not observing Ramadan because they are weak Muslims, but typically in the 99.9% of the cases, if you go to a Muslim, he knows anything about religion, and you tell him, should you fast in Ramadan? He says, yes, fasting is a pillar of Islam.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so Blessed Be He says, is Ramadan a healthy practice for humanity according to science?
Wow. Okay, this is a question for you. I can have a comment, but you can go ahead with it. You tried fasting yourself.
Okay. Well, yeah, I think there are health benefits to fasting, definitely. And actually, I'll put up Zing's comment. Zing says fasting may provide several health benefits, including weight loss, improved blood sugar control, and decreased inflammation. Going on, it might also offer protection against certain conditions like cancer and neurodegenerative disorders. Do you want to add something?
Yeah, I want the audience to look at something called autophagy. Okay. It is a recent discovery. I think it was discovered, the relation between fasting and autophagy. I think it was discovered by a Japanese scientist in 2014. And I believe through the last few years, he even got a Nobel Prize for it. And autophagy is the scientific discovery that caused intermittent fasting to become very popular during this last decade. Okay. And what autophagy is, it is a mechanism, a cellular mechanism that causes the cell to feed on defective parts of the cell. And this happens when you deprive the body of food for a certain amount of time, at least like 8 hours. And this is why intermittent fasting was put on the table. And I can't remember the name of the scientist now. But the amazing, if you read his complete work, if you read his complete work, you will find that the exact way that Muslims fast is the perfect way to kick off autophagy in the human body. So I think I read that, it was many years, 2014 was a long time ago. But his discoveries and later his Nobel Prize caused his research to be very popular in the Islamic world. And at a point of time before he became very famous, he gave very specific comments. No, it is not. It is not what you're saying. Autophagy is different than what you're writing. Okay. What you're mixing between autophagy and apoptosis. Apoptosis is programmed cell death. Autophagy is this mechanism that is kicked in the cells or at the cellular level, whether to destroy defective cells or to destroy defective components of the cell itself. It destroys, it digests, or it converts proteins back to amino acids to feed because there is no external source. It's really a cleaning of the body. And one of its effects is that it reduces cancer, etc., etc. So all of those effects of very strong effects of fasting are actually a byproduct of the process of it. I really encourage people to read about this matter of autophagy. And I think the one thing that was not very clear is what is the perfect time for fasting. I think at one point of time, science will discover that there is something specific that you fast from dawn to sunset. I don't have a proof for it. I just think that it will turn out this way because this is the Islamic practice. And I think it will also be discovered at a point of time that being deprived from both food and drinking has something on top of just intermittent fasting, where you just stop eating and then the drinking is available, etc. Because this has also been the practice since 4,000 years, since the Jews, so since Moses. So I think this must be very, very important. Yeah, but there is scientific proof that fasting has good health benefits. Yeah.
Now this is off topic, but B.S. Lewis is, I think he's trying to start a little fight here just for fun. We've actually discussed this in a previous discussion, but I'll let you answer and then we can talk at our difference. Is Jesus God?
Yeah, I'll add an extra comment. It is, if you go to the statistics, you will find that cancer is at minimum levels with Muslims. And I think that the reason, if somebody does some good studies, I think there will be great correlation between Muslims having fasting as a standing tradition and very low levels of cancer. Now, is Jesus God? My belief as a Muslim is definitely no. Jesus is not God in my belief. Jesus is a prophet, however, and one of the mightiest of the 5 most mighty prophets of God. So we have 25 prophets that are mentioned in the Quran, of which 5 are called Ulil Azm, ones with great persistence, and of which one of the most venerated is Jesus. So yeah, so Jesus has a very strong status in Islam, and Mary, his mother, is one of 4 perfect women, and she is the most perfect of them all. So this is the status of Jesus and Mary, Virgin Mary in Islam. And when we typically say Jesus, we would say peace be upon him, because it's an obligation to Muslims. So we really have very high regard to Jesus as Muslims, and we believe that Jesus has a second coming. And we have just had this discussion, me and Rebecca, I think a couple of weeks ago.
Mhm.
And the Islamic point of view is that when Jesus comes again, Muslims and Christians will believe that he is coming again. Jews who will believe in him at that time will think that this is his first coming, but he will tell them this is my second coming, by the way.
By the way.
Yeah. By the way, is my text, not his. So when they believe in him, they will also believe that this is his second coming. And at that time, everyone that is now believed in Jesus the way he is will accept, in my belief, will accept Jesus as a person, a prophet, and somebody who is the religious leader of everybody who believes in God at the end times. So this is what Jesus is in our religion. Yeah.
And Ahmed and I agreed that when Jesus shows up and says, well, actually, here's who I am, we're both going to submit whatever that answer is. So if Jesus shows up and says, Ahmed, I am God, then he's going to be okay with that. And if he shows up and says, actually, I'm not, then I'm going to be okay with that.
Well, actually, there is a little trick about that. So good that you will be okay with that. The trick in Islam is that, as I told you, there is 2 persons who will come contemporaneously, like in Christianity. So there is Christ and Antichrist. Now, the problem with Muslims is that Muslims believe that the Antichrist is going to impersonate Jesus and is going to say, I am God also. But we have this little distinction thing, that if a Muslim is a believer, so he believes in God in his heart and he wants to follow the truth, he will be able to see the Antichrist with the word kafir, the word disbeliever, written between his eyes. So if I see Jesus and I don't read kafir, either I'm not a believer, so I cannot know he is the Antichrist, or I'm a believer and he is Jesus. And then if he says I'm God, I'll be really surprised. But then I will have to go back to the Quran. And in the Quran, it says, قُلْ إِنْ كَانَ الرَّحْمَنِ وَلَدٌ فَأَنَا أَوَّلُ الْعَابِدِينَ. Say to them, Prophet Muhammad, that if there is a son to God, then I am the first one to worship. So I will have to follow the Quran, but I don't expect that he would say that he's God at all.
So this might be the last question, because I will have to go do something for my son pretty soon. But actually, BS had asked, I guess you answered this, how will we tell the difference between Dajjal and Jesus? So yeah, very good. But let me put up Sandal's question. Do all Muslims fast the same way?
All Muslims fast the same way in terms of what they don't do and what they do during the fasting. Shia Muslims some of them extend their fasting not to sunset, but also to the setting of even the lights that come with the sunset. So they will wait until Salat al-Isha, which is like 1 more hour, almost, give or take 1 hour, 1 hour, 20 minutes sometimes, etc., depending on where you are and what time of the year. But Shia Muslims, some of them will add an extra hour to that. The reason is a difference in the interpretation of the language. So in the Quran, it says, ثُمَّ أَتِمُّ الصِّيَامَ إِلَى اللَّيْلِ, and then complete the fasting until the night. Now, in the classical Arabic language, the night starts at sunset. Some people may like to interpret it that it starts when every remnant of these orange lights, twilights in the sky that are there sometime after the sun has set. So some would say no, we'll consider that the night starts after at Salat al-Isha. This is okay. They are, they fast more, but everybody fasts until Maghrib, and everybody stops eating, drinking, and having marital relations during the morning. Yeah. So it's almost universal. Yeah, let's say it's universal. And Shia put 1 extra hour. Some of them.
Well, this is a good final comment to put up. Andre says, Ahmed, thanks for your testimony and explanations. You allowed me to better understand the fasting of my Muslim neighbors who are beautifully spiritual people. A very instructive stream.
Wow, thank you. Yeah, you made my day.
Do you have anything else? What did I not ask you about Ramadan that you want to share?
Yeah, so Ramadan has this night that I was talking about. It's called Laylatul Qadr.
Mm-hmm.
And Muslims believe that in Laylatul Qadr, the first revelation of the Quran happened. So this is the night where Quran came to the worldly universe, let's say, and the first verses were revealed. And this is where Prophet Muhammad received his first revelation from Archangel Gabriel in the cave around Mecca. And this Laylatul Qadr is it is narrated in the Quran as Laylatul Qadri khayrun min alfi shahr. The night of Qadr is better than a thousand months. And Laylatul Qadr happens in the last 10 nights of Ramadan, specifically in the odd ones. The night of the 21st, 23rd, 25th, etc. So it's one of them. It's not known which one of them, and it's intentional that it's not known. So some Muslims like to believe that it's the night of the 27th. Some like to believe that's the night of the 25th, but the universal consensus is that it's not known for sure. And since lunar months, you can have some debate whether the month has started or not. So I'm not very sure which ones are really the odd nights and which ones are really the even nights. So the resultant of that is that Muslims have great observance for every night in the last 10 nights. So yeah, sorry. Is
it extra if your birthday falls on one of those nights? Is that an extra blessing? No?
No. But it's an extra blessing. Let's say it's an extra blessing if you are really doing well that Ramadan and those 10 nights and you pass away. So you have, you have the best deeds and the best, multiplication of your deeds, and then you pass away. So some people would really like, we are all gonna die, So I would rather die after a time where I have had forgiveness or I was at the best shape, best relation with God. So Laylatul Qadr khayrun min alfi shahr, it means that if you are able to keep praying to God from sunset to dawn for that night, number one, it is believed that this is a night of forgiveness. So and it is believed that if you have been good for the year, you will be guided to be good that Ramadan. And then if you are good in the first and the second 10 nights, you will be guided to be good in the last 10 nights. And then you will be guided and you will have the energy to be energetic at that night. So you will find masajid, mosques, very full of people who are praying in the last 10 nights. If you open your satellite TV to Mecca or Medina, you will find millions, literally millions of people praying there shoulder to shoulder, because everybody wants to meet that night. It's not because they want to meet that night and not be good for the rest of the year. It is like, your final exam. If you've been studying for the whole year, and then the professor says, there will be a surprise exam in the last month of the year. So you're studying for the full year. Guess who will pass that surprise exam? It's actually not somebody who's been lucky to have studied the right chapter and the right page where there will be this one question that he typically doesn't work this way. So this specific night in Ramadan is very special, and it is one of the things that causes people to be energized. Another thing about Ramadan is the feast, the Eid that comes after Ramadan, where people will be celebrating the end of the fasting, not because they hate the fasting, but because yay, we have been victorious. We did it. Yeah, we did manage to get through Ramadan, 30 days, 30 nights, fasting in the morning, praying at the night, reciting, being charitable, forgiving people, getting forgiven, hopefully being forgiven from people, reading the Quran, being the best that we can do. And this is now okay. Let's have a new start and let's celebrate this new start. Typically, this one day after Ramadan, there is a special prayer right after dawn, and then people will go visit each other, and kids will get presents. Okay, typically they'll get money and they will get candy, and I've talked about the alms, the specific alms, the zakat of al-fitr. So everybody has food, even the poor, because everybody has been giving them the food for that day. And so there is a celebration after Ramadan. This is called Eid al-Fitr, the feast of the breakfast, and it is forbidden to fast on that day. It is haram to fast on that day. You have to eat. You have to eat. So right after dawn, everybody would eat something, just to prove that he is not fasting. So it is. I will accept and I will obey if God wants me to fast. I will obey if God wants me not to fast. So it is a very special day. You're not allowed to fast, and So there are so many nice things about Ramadan. People listen to sermons. People will typically okay, there is this monasticism in Christianity. I'm not sure if there is monasticism in Protestantism or not, but if you're a monk, okay, you will separate yourself from life. Yeah. So Ramadan and specifically the last 10 days and nights of Ramadan is where Muslims become monks. There is this specific worship called i'tikaf. And in i'tikaf, you will go to a masjid and you will lock yourself in. You will only go out to go to the bathroom or to find food. You will typically not go out to find food because people will bring you food in the masjid because they know you're fasting. And you will spend 10 days sleeping on the ground with very little clothes and only praying and reading Quran and trying to be the best of yourself. So this is where many Muslims will do i'tikaf. Some who are in Mecca and Medina will do i'tikaf in Mecca and Medina. And the grand mosques there will accept people for doing i'tikaf. They will go in the mosque on the 19th and get out on the 30th. And they'll just get out to go to the bathroom. And people in their home countries can do i'tikaf in their masajid. They will go into the masjid on the 19th and get out for the feast.
And, now, do you mean that this is a change in their life that will be permanent? Like when they get done with that? Okay. You're just saying for that days. Period. Okay.
Just for the 10 days. They will leave home. They will take a little bag with some clothes in it. And maybe somebody will bring them food, but you will live a life of a monk for those 10 days, apart from already being fasting. And it is a great experience, actually, very spiritual experience.
That sounds like it does sound like a good experience.
Yeah, very, very, like what you were saying, like the church, we will fast for a week or something.
Yes.
This is like we will be monks for a week. So so that's it. Yeah. So one thing that not many people who are not Muslims know about it. Not many Muslims do it, but a significant amount of Muslims do it, I have to say. Yeah.
Nice. That is something I've never heard of that before. So that's really cool. Did you say there's a name for it?
It's called i'tikaf. I'tikaf.
Yeah.
I'tikaf means so i'takafa, it means like he is concentrated himself on doing something. So i'tikaf is like isolating myself from life and just 10 days of worship, nothing else. It is one of the most beautiful experiences, I have to say. It completely makes life look small, and it is a transformative experience. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Gorgeous Roddy Chrome says Ahmed is a great guest, easy to listen to. Hope you'll have him back. And someone else said, the same. I agreed. I can't find out who it was because it's gone too far. But anyway,
somebody is commenting until you go crazy from solitary. No, you are not doing i'tikaf alone. There are other people in the masjid who are doing i'tikaf. Actually, it gets very social. because you talk to people and you talk about spiritual issues and you hear sermons and you pray together. And when other people come to the masjid to do the prayers and to do the tahajjud prayer and the Taraweeh prayer that I was talking to you about, the 21 and the 18, etc., you're already there, you know? So the message is pretty busy, but the problem is they go home and you don't. You just stay, you sleep on the ground. So, yeah.
Well, Ahmed, thank you so much for spending this time. And I hope that you and your family have a very blessed Ramadan and that you get very close to God. And so I thank you for taking the time to share your traditions with us.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Thank you for having me and for sharing this with your audience. And okay, and if you want to know more about Ramadan, probably I'll be doing some episodes probably until the middle of the month, because I want to be ready for the last 10. But I'll have some things about what Ramadan is and things about the Quran there, if somebody's interested. We want to get you out of atheism. I think being a Muslim is better than being an atheist, Rebecca.
Of course it is. Of course it is. So much better.
Yeah.
So much better. So please.
Even Rebecca will not mind.
Hey, look, I'd much rather you be a Muslim than an atheist. If you're an atheist watching this, please go to Ahmed's channel, watch Finding Truth, and hopefully you'll find a little bit of truth. At least find God, your creator, who loves you. And as Ahmed said in the stream we did right before this on examining origins, what God has created, we also see in that creation that God cares. And so we have a wonderful creator who loves you, and I hope you all know him. And so thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate everybody watching today and all of your comments. Have a great day.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks to everybody.